Welcome Pastor Jeremy as he comes to bring the word today.
Yes. You ever wondered about, like when you make a decision and you find out later that it had a bigger impact, whether it be good or bad, than you thought it would have had because it seemed like such a tiny little thing? And then later you found out that it had huge reward or huge repercussions later? Have you ever seen or experienced something like that throughout your life? Let me see your hand. Come on. Well, that's good. Because today we're going to talk about some little things. The little things. If you brought your Bibles, I'm going to come out of 1 Samuel. Yeah, this is going to be good. 1 Samuel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Samuel. I love doing that. I'm going to do it every time, I think. Chapter 17, and I'm going to start at verse 48. So it was, when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, that David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. Then David put his hand in his bag and he took out a stone. He slung it. It struck the Philistine right in the forehead. And he fell on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with his own sword. And when the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. They fled. You know, I don't think that we are supposed to run from things because it's intimidating. I don't think we're supposed to run from things just because it's intimidating. Because we have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. We are to run towards whatever it is. You know, some say that Goliath stood 10 feet tall, come from the group of giants that was in the land. And he had came to defy the armies of the living God. And a boy named David, well, he decided he was going to do something about it. And he ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching into his bag and taking out a stone, slung it, struck the Philistine right on the head. Fell to the ground. He cuts off his head. He triumphs over the Philistine with a sling, a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. And David ran over there, stood over him, took a hold of the man's sword, drew it from the sheath, and after he killed him, he cut off his head. And when everybody saw it, what did they do? They ran. They fled. What I want you to do is I want you to think about something in your life that was terrible when you were going through it? Think about it. You remember that one thing that was so terrible that you were going through during that season of your life. But when you look back on it now, years later, that you can actually see that the hand of God was on it. So you can see that now. That trial gave you something that you didn't have before that. And that you're actually even a better person now than you were before that happened. Now, Christy, of course, my wife, she's got to thinking about right then about what would have happened if she'd have said no instead of I do. Ain't you, baby? And how much you'd have missed. You'd have missed your miracle. You'd have missed your moment. Yes. Aren't you glad you didn't miss it?
So glad. I love you and your wife.
Because you know those scary times in life. That those opportunities that scared you at the time. Yeah. See, when David took his slingshot and his rocks and his shepherding equipment and used it to kill a giant by the name of Goliath, did you know that it almost didn't happen? See, this is one of the most famous Bible stories that you have ever heard about in the Bible. You got Jesus who died on the cross and went to heaven, and then you got David and Goliath right up there at the top. David, the unlikely one, took down the giant in this challenge of champions, in this ancient fight to the death known as representative or single combat. This is where the two armies would come and head off on two ends of the field. And instead of all of these men, however many are in the army, clash in the center of the field, slaying one another until whoever has the most wins. Or you can send out each of your best fighters and the winner takes all and save everyone's life. It is possible that David could have missed his moment to slay his Goliath had he not been obedient in the little things. See, he had a decision that led him to this opportunity, this moment in time, such a time as this, moment of divine destiny. See, I think a lot of us miss our turn to be used by God because of disobedience. Because for whatever reason, we just don't see the significance in those little things. You know, it is the little foxes that ruin the whole vine. I love God. I love God because He knew how to find David even in the field. He didn't need David to be in the lineup. You know what? You don't have to position yourself in front of people to be used by God. You don't have to convince a committee that you're good enough for the grace of God. I mean, how many people in here are grateful that God can use whomever He wills? And when God gets ready to use you, there ain't a devil in hell that can do anything to stop it. Touch your neighbor and say, don't miss it. Come on, tell him. Touch him, tell him, don't miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss your turn. Don't miss your turn. Now see, if it had been up to the people, David wouldn't have gotten his turn. But when God says it's your time, He knows exactly where to find you. So don't worry about whether or not people appreciate you. I wouldn't even worry about if they notice you or not. Don't even worry about whether they call you by your correct name or not. It doesn't matter, because you cannot disappoint what God has appointed. You know, if David hadn't been out in the field keeping sheep, he would not have been prepared to lead people. The little things that seemed so insignificant was exactly the thing that he needed to prepare him for his assignment. Now, I'm sure he was thinking that, I need to get ready for this king thing I'm going to be. I better get ready. But sometimes when God announces a change in your life, it doesn't activate immediately. Come on. You know what I'm talking about? He showed you something and then was like, where's it at? Really? It doesn't always activate immediately. And we get confused when God says that it's your time, but He makes us wait your turn. You like that? That is good. Dang straight, that's good. Makes you wait your turn. But sometimes God is doing things that you don't know about. On that day, it was announced that David was going to be king. It was a whole lot of years later before he ever got to wear the crown. Long time later. Well, when you give your life to Christ, that very moment, you're saved. In that moment, you're forgiven. In that moment, you're cleansed and redeemed. All those things are true of you immediately. But all of the changes that those new realities are meant to produce in your life do not happen immediately, but gradually. They better be happening gradually. Gradually, as you press towards the mark of the prize of the high calling of Christ. Gradually, as you seek ye what? First the kingdom and His righteousness. So all these things can be added to you. You know what I see a lot of people do? I see people become very discouraged in the process of waiting for the change that God initiated. We become discouraged and confused. What I'm trying to say is sometimes you give up on your calling too easily and you miss your turn. David didn't go out after that and start trying on crowns and practicing his kingly wave and his walk, learning how to do a kingly autograph. No. He went back out in the field, tending sheep. Back into the grind to do exactly what he was doing before. Until one day. One day what, Jeremy? Let me tell you. Listen. One day, he was given an assignment by his father. One day, he was given an assignment by his father. Okay, now listen. His father turns to him one day. Now, I don't know if a lot of people know this part of the story or not, because everybody knows about the slingshot, and everybody knows about Goliath, and everybody knows how Goliath falls. Okay? I'm telling you, people love to hear about Goliath because everybody has something in their life that's bigger than them. Everybody's got something in their life that's intimidating them and harassing them. Everybody has a fear or an anxiety, an addiction. I could go around the room. And I think I could probably point at people, look at you long enough to guess what your Goliath is. Some of us spin too much. Oh, you ain't going to talk to me, are you? You're just going to sit there. You ain't going to talk to me. You're going to act like it ain't you. Some of us spend too much. Some of us complain too much. Come on. Yeah. Some of us talk too much. Woke somebody up on that one. Yeah. Let them convictions stir around up in here. Darn Goliath. Some of us judge too much. I mean, not us, but other people, you know. Everybody has a Goliath. Preach about Goliath? Makes for good preaching. Goliath, he's going to fall. You can kill the giant. And I believe all of that. I do. But can I tell you a secret? Most people never even get to Goliath. Just shooting you straight. Preachers are trying to teach people how to kill an enemy that they're never even going to meet. Let me show you something. 1 Samuel 17, verse 16 says that this giant named Goliath, he was confronting and defying the people of God for 40 days. This is going on. He'd taunt them, harass them. Now, Jesse, that's David's dad, okay? In verse 17, he tells his son, now this is kind of confusing because Jesse must have forgot that David was anointed to be the king. I don't know. And he tells David, he says, come here, he says, take this roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread to your brothers and hurry to their camp. Now wait. David's anointed to be king. His dad was there, saw the whole thing. See, these are those moments that most people never pass. You ready? If you're going to write something down, write this. Here's your one thing you need to write down. Go stick it on your refrigerator. Most people, they choose respectability over honor and humility. There's your assignment for the week. Study it. Why? Well, because I'm your father, because I'm your husband, because I'm a this, because I'm a that, because I said so, because I'm the boss. Respectability as opposed to honor and humility. This was a test of submission to authority, a test of obedience, a test of honor, a test of humility. This was the test to see if David would do the little things. See, sometimes we want God to use us to do a big thing, and yet we won't even do a little thing. Talk to me. I mean, how in the world is God going to use us to do something if we can't even do something little? Are you too good to do something little? I love David's heart because the story could have stopped right there. Right there, that story could have ended if he'd have said that I'm not going to do it. I'm a king, and you're devaluing me, so I'm not going to do it. I mean, you all know all those ways that we disobey God. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? All those little things that we don't do when we knew. Like, what do you mean, Jeremy? It's like those little things like calling your sister to tell her that you're sorry. Reaching out to somebody who looks different to you and listen to them talk about their struggle. Those little things. It's funny to me. See, some of us want to kill Goliath, but we don't want to tend sheep. We don't want to make deliveries. We want to see big victories. Yes, we do. But how in the world can God use us to kill giants if we can't follow simple instructions? Now the text says that he ran to Goliath. But you have to understand that before he ran to Goliath, you look at verse 20, it says that early in the morning, David left the flock in the care of a shepherd and loaded up and set out. Now here's what David did not know at the time. Because we know it, and we know it because it's easy to interpret what God's going to do when we're sitting here reading the whole story, because we get to read the whole story. But can I tell you something? David did not know this was 1 Samuel 17. He didn't know. He didn't know what was happening. Everything was happening in real time. From his perspective, this was just another day. Well, that's because sometimes God wraps destiny in what we perceive as just another day. The same day that he was told to take bread to the battle lines was the same day he stood over Goliath. But he didn't know that. And he would have missed his turn if he had not obeyed in the little things. And there's something else that's interesting. Something else that happened just before David went to fight Goliath. Another thing happened. The Bible says that when David showed up that day, and you know, he's got his cheese, he's got his roasted grain and his bread that his dad told him to take to his brothers. Just doing a simple thing, a little thing. Don't think that because you can't affect something at the highest level of power that God cannot use you in a great way. David wasn't even in the army, and he won the war. He wasn't even in a uniform. He didn't even have a weapon that was fit for combat, and he's the one that killed the giant. So David's here, and this giant, I'm going to tell you what happened. I mean, he's here, and this giant's taunting him and harassing him. Taunting the armies of God, and David shows up down there, and he hears all this when he's making his delivery, and he hears this going on. He don't even know what to think. He's like, what in the world is this about? He was upset. This ain't right. He ain't going to be showing up down here and talking about my God like that. And David starts running his mouth. He ain't going to talk about my people like that. I don't care how big he is. This ain't right. And his brother, Eliab, he overheard him saying all this stuff. You know, the tall brother, the big one, the good one, the one that everybody thought, comes up to David. You know, and he actually accuses David in verse 28, David's older brother. The one that everybody thought was fit to be king, even the prophet at first. The one that you thought would have went out to fight the giant. And when Eliab, his brother, hears David's conversation and David running his mouth because he's upset about what he's hearing as he's showing up to make this delivery. And his brother, the word says he burned with anger at David and said to him, why have you come down here? Why are you here? And with whom did you leave the sheep with? Out in the wilderness. You know what? If David would have listened to his brother, Eliab, he would have never even seen Goliath. If David would have listened to his brother, he'd have never killed his enemy. But as you could see, David had his eyes on something bigger. The Bible says that in verse 29, David says, what have I done? What have I done? Can I not even speak? And then turned away to someone else. He then turned away from his brother. Touch your neighbor and whisper to him and say, don't miss your turn. See, because if you get distracted by Eliab, if you get distracted by what the media is presenting to everybody, it's not even reality as far as I can tell. It's an image to project and sell everybody on fear. And if you fight the Eliab, or you get distracted by your brother, you'll miss your Goliath. But I feel the turn coming. I feel that kind of turn that we will stand together and we will turn together. I hear 2 Chronicles say that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn and turn and turn and turn. Don't miss your turn.